All right, Craig. So we've talked about you, we've talked about your product and done a little bit of an introduction there. But let's talk about what's on the market right now and what's available to the end user and some of the advantages and the disadvantages of what we do like and don't like about those products. Like, first of all, the one thing I use, and a lot of you out there may know this, I use a product called pressure-treated hemlock. That's what's available to me in my region. In the east or maybe in the southern states, they use southern yellow pine or different pine applications. Inherently, that's all I've used for the last 30 years. That's really all I know. But as the technology and these new products evolve, and you can see, like, your product was maybe more strictly a commercial type of an install before residential. They've been using this in commercial applications for decades, where the U.S. home market is really new to these alternate materials. But I see a wave coming, a huge one, that is going to infiltrate this market, and it's going to start removing the pressure-treated hemlocks out of our system.
Yeah, I think that there'll always be a place for that lumber. But
I agree.
When you look at this objectively, there has been so much technology thrown at decking boards and nothing put into the deck frame.
Right.
Like nothing.
Right, the skeleton, it's your skeleton. And I say skeleton a lot in my builds because if you don't have a proper skeleton, your body's not going to hold up its own weight.
Yeah.
You know, so you've got to have good bones before you can get to the beautiful part that's on top.
Yeah.
We always make a statement in our projects. We always want a fine finished look, but to get to that fine finish, you got to have something that's going to hold it up, not just today, but in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, when you go back and you look at those projects and it's still like razor flat.
Yeah.
You know?
What we're hearing a lot on the market is, so the decking boards have got 25-year warranties, 50-year warranties.
Yeah.
And then people are going, well, why am I putting a product that's going to last that long onto pressure-treated lumber in a wet environment where we all know it's problematic?
Old pressure-treated lumber used to last 30 years.
Yeah.
But the new pressure-treated lumbers and the new chemicals they're putting in it, I've seen it fail in 6 years, 5 years.
Yeah, wow.
But it'll last maybe 20 if we're lucky. But now we're talking about using a product that's going to last lifetime.
Yeah.
We're putting a 50-year decking product down on a lifetime frame.
Yeah.
Even if the decking wears out or fades out, you can rip it, take it up, and put down new decking on that aluminum frame. The aluminum frame's going to last for hundreds.
Yeah. We've even got clients where they are putting down aluminum because they know that they can pick it up and rejig the design of it and reuse it again. So like large commercial like malls are using it because they know that they're going to remodel their mall every 5 years.
In 50 years or whatever,
Well, they're doing
years.
it like every 5-10 years.
Oh, okay.
So they're wanting to change it. But
and it's recyclable.
It's totally recyclable. So it's like when it does have an end of life.
We try to recycle our old wooden frames, but it's not the same. Like, you can recycle aluminum and get a new aluminum thing out of it. When you recycle wood, it's usually being taken to an incinerator or some kind of a mulching or something like that. Yeah, so it's not quite the same green effect of an aluminum product.
Yeah.
So can totally see that as well as a benefit.
So what are the things that you do like about the lumber framing?
Well, in my region, I like the fact that we can get a solid sawn piece of material. Like, I don't have to laminate a bunch of stuff together to make a beam.
It's a bit different on the East Coast, though, right?
It's way different on the East Coast. All you East Coasters, I feel for you, man. You're laminating 2x10s together to make a 6x10 or something of that nature, which is actually technically stronger than a 4x10 or a 6x10 that I can get. But the look of what I do, they wrap everything. They're constantly wrapping all their beams because they're ugly.
Yeah.
I don't have to do that unless the client's like, hey, I don't like the way those pressure treated incised marks. I don't like that, then we can wrap the beam, no problem. But it's not mandatory because it's not a bad look when it's all said and done.
Yeah.
We can add some decorative hardware to it.
That effort.
Yeah, it is a lot of effort. Like I said, it's widely available. It's easy to obtain. I can have it overnight, and it's
used to working with it.
I'm used to working with it.
Yep.
I have, I've sawdust in my veins, man. I mean, it's basically every time I build a new deck, it's out of pressure treated hemlock.
Yeah, and you got all the kit for it, right?
Everything's set up for it. I have all the tools, special saws, special beam saws. Yeah, I have everything I need and more to craft it.
Yeah.
So a lot of my frames, a client will come home and go, "Wow, it's too bad you got to cover this up. It's so beautiful."
Yeah.
It's like, well, it won't be so much in 60 days if you don't cover it. So
needs covering.
That's coming. The cons, but one thing that has been a little touchy lately is that the price has been very volatile.
Yeah.
Up and down, up and down. It's been a roller coaster of emotion. And I've actually lost thousands of dollars on units of lumber.
On bids
like I've sold a job and it's 6 months out. I can't always guarantee the price of the materials now.
Yeah.
It's unprofessional compared to how I used to just stick to my guns every time on price.
Yeah.
So
the big pros to summarize that would be availability.
Mm-hmm.
You can get it overnight, and you've got your kit. You've got all the tools for it, and you're familiar with working with it.
Right.
Like that, in a nutshell, that would be it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we move on to the things that you don't like about it,
right?
Where do you start?
It's heavy. My back hurts and my shoulders hurt. As I expand my team, I don't have to carry lumber as much when I have a couple guys on site. But lately, I've been huffing a lot of lumber, and it's heavy, man.
Yeah.
And it's never consistent.
Yeah.
One board's heavy, one board's light.
Yeah.
What that tells me is there's different moisture content in the lumber, which means it's going to shrink at a different rate, and you're going to get a different end result by the time it dries out.
Yeah.
You're trying to predict how much a board might shrink and how you install it. You're like Houdini. You're trying to figure it out. You don't know 100%.
Looking into the future.
Yeah, I'm a fortune teller.
Yeah.
Educated guess would be the best way to put it. So I don't like the way it warps. I don't like the way some of it's bowed and some of it's not. Mm-hmm. I don't like the way when you leave it out in the sun for too long, it starts to split, crack, warp, and delaminate.
Well, you got to use it straight away, right?
Yeah.
It comes off the truck and you can't leave it.
No, you got to get it installed. Yeah. And the one thing that is a real, especially lately with they're using newer growth timber to cut the wood out of instead of old growth timber, which has more rings, which means the wood is denser.
Yeah.
The problem I have is I might get a call back and say, "Hey, my deck's dipped in a certain spot." And I'm like, well, there's not much I can do about that except to try and jack it up and add a really severely crowned joist next to a joist that's dipped the wrong way and see if I can get it out. But I can't. I can't get. Or do you want me to rip the whole deck out and start over? Because what else do you want me to do? It's Mother Nature. I can't control it. So that's the negative.
And I suppose the other thing is it just absorbs so much moisture. So right, so and when it's wet, it's growing, and then when it's drying, it's shrinking. It's shrinking, and so it's the complete opposite to composite.
Yeah, absolutely. It's completely different, and that's an annual event.
Yeah,
around here we get 4 seasons, and wood swells and wood shrinks.
Yeah,
and it's hard on fasteners.
Yeah, for sure. And so what other steps do you have to do to protect it as well while you're installing it?
Every time we make a cut in treated lumber, we treat the end grains.
Yeah.
And then every time we finish a deck, before we put a decking board on it, we cover the tops with protective membrane tape.
Yeah, for sure. So that adds more cost.
More cost, more time. Yeah. If it's raining, it's impossible to get the tape to stick.
Yeah.
There's inherent issues with it.
Yeah. And so how do you go about butt joining like links together to make a longer beam?
You don't. Well, possible? you have to have a post underneath it.
Yeah.
It's the only way. Trust me, I've seen it.
That's a loaded question.
I've seen it on so many applications.
Yeah.
And or tear outs. I'm like, what were they thinking? The beam is joined in the middle of a span with no post support.
Yeah.
It's just destined for failure.
Yeah, for sure.
So it is what it is.
That's cool. And so I suppose that would mean that you've got more wastage, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like if you're buying a 16-foot length or a 20-foot length, but your span is 2/3 of it, then you're throwing the other bit away or trying to keep it, and then you've got all your shorts. And and
they're no good for anything. You can't glue them all together, and you use them to block up your car or something, or put up for a trailer tire for a wheel chock, but that's about
stinky
it.
Firewood. Yeah.
No, it's actually toxic. You can't burn it. You can't burn pressure treated hemlock. The ashes are toxic. Just for all you people out there that are doing it, you should probably stop. Maybe that's why you're sick.
Don't do that. That's why you come
have
out
emphysema or something from it. But
so, and then how do the spans compare? Like, I know all the answers to these questions, but I'm just facilitating the conversation. If you're comparing spans of lumber to spans of steel or aluminum, that's like, we worked it out last night, right?
Right. You would have to use a thicker member of wood to get the same span. So if thickness is an issue, alternate materials are the way to go.
Yeah.
Steel or aluminum is definitely the way to go.
So short, it doesn't span as far.
No.
Yeah.
No. You're using a 12-inch joist to get a 16-foot span.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay. And then I suppose when it comes to low height decks, it's just completely problematic. Well, I've seen it just time and time again. Like so many projects where you go there and either the timber's rotted out or it's, you can't even get a lumber member in there in the height that you've been given. If you've got a
you might be ripping them down on a pie,
Yeah.
and you just exposed all that open, and you're putting that down, and then the moisture's crawling right up into it. Yeah, it's scary.
Well, especially on a waterproof membrane deck where, typically you've got a fall like so, and then people are getting joists and they're basically ripping the joists into wedges.
Been there.
And then they're putting nogs in between to stop the joist from rolling over, and then that stops all your drainage and your airflow, and it just becomes this moisture
nightmare.
trap. And
that's what it's going to be.
Yeah. So then you got more expense because you're wrapping posts.
Yep.
Or putting on deeper fascia or trim board.
Yeah,
around
more
the outside
fascia.
to cover
More
it up.
expense. Yep.
For sure. And then your durability is not consistent with the decking board that you're putting on top. So you're basically putting...
Right.
And then often like a Rolls-Royce product on the top onto an inferior product.
Yeah, I'm using a 50-year deck board.
Yeah.
And a 20-year frame. Maybe 30-year frame. With the steps I take, I would say 30 years, no problem.
Yeah. Okay.
And most people are like, oh, well, I might be in this house or I might not. But, you're keeping the value of the home.
Yep.
So regardless of that person still in that house in 30 years, that deck value is still there because it's basically
100%.
Unbreakable.
We see that a lot, like the value of the houses going up and then the value of a decking project and what that adds to the house comparison to what it costs.
Yeah.
It's super good value to be putting that on there.
Yeah.
So.
You're going to retain 85 to 105% of your deck investment.
Yeah, for sure.
I've confirmed that with several home appraisers.
Yeah.
And you can't just call an appraiser and get that information.
Yeah.
You have to catch one on a site to talk to them about it to get them to agree or disagree with you about that statement.
Yeah.
But I've never had a home appraiser. I've had real estate agents tell me, oh, that's not true. But then every home appraiser I've talked to has told me absolutely 100% you're going to get that. If it's a nice, well-built Dr. Deck's deck.
Yeah. Where we are, you get double.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
The house prices are that high that if you put that into, a backyard type renovation, it's just lifting the double amount of the investment that you've just put in. So if you spend $100,000 on it,
it's going to be worth $2 million.
Yeah. Well, if your house is worth $1 or $2 million, then you've just completely changed the back area of your house, so that you've doubled your outdoor living area. You've almost got this huge footprint. That,
where you live, it's a lot sunnier than where I live. So we don't spend as much time outside as you do.
Yeah. Okay, so with regards to steel framing, tell me what you like about steel framing.
Steel framing is flat. It spans a long distance.
It's painted black. Like I like
some
the
of
black ones. Yeah,
some of it is.
Yeah.
But then there's guys using just like off gray, and then the worst is silver,
galvanized.
like galvanized.
Yeah.
Just a galvanized frame. I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
You got to look between all those deck boards and see silver, and it's bright. And you'll get a sunburn looking at it too long.
So, but we like the fact that it doesn't require grading. It's all consistent lengths.
It's very consistent.
It's consistent dimensions and things like that.
But there's one thing about steel that I cannot get on board with. How do you cut it?
Yeah.
Without making a devastating mess. Because when you're cutting steel, you create shavings or files. And when that happens, all those little shavings drop to the ground, whatever surface you're on, and then when it rains or it gets moist or even a light dew overnight, will turn to rust. And then you have rust spots
Everywhere.
all over like millions of them, all over the place, hundreds of thousands of rust spots that you can't get out, and that will create a serious problem for you and your clients. If it gets on your PVC decking or your fine decking, that could ruin it as well. It's really hard to get out, and I'm just not convinced that that's the right thing to do. Every time you cut steel, you have to treat it well, or else it's going to rust through.
Yeah, we've seriously considered developing that steel side of our system, but it's like a total deal breaker. Everybody that we talk to, they're like, man, I've cut steel on site and I've had to replace like $5,000 worth of tiles because I completely ruined them for a client. And they were natural stone. We couldn't get the rust particles out of it. We've seen rust particles in the bottom of a pool, and the pool had to be emptied and resurfaced. Like it was just like... So...
No, thank you.
Yeah, so... I mean, if you're going to have to walk around the back of the house to an area where you can cut it on grass, then that does slow you down. But
that's what I've heard of guys doing is setting up a complete like station of tarps and in the yard somewhere in the lower left corner, and that's where they make every single cut.
Yeah.
And then they have to pre-treat it and then bring it back.
Yeah.
So
that goes for grinding, right?
Oh,
like
yeah.
If you've got to cut something off in situ when it's installed, then...
yeah, man, you're hoping you're working on dirt only.
Yeah.
You know, and no other
finished
surfaces, because it would be a nightmare to try and maintain that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
And the other thing is, when you're fastening your decking to steel, there's no alternate method of hidden fastener. You're just basically face screwing it with either a stainless steel screw that's pre-drilled, or you're using a Cortex driller, which is fine if you want to Cortex the entire deck.
Yeah. But then, I mean, that introduces the whole discussion around you've got a point of corrosion on every single screw that you're putting.
Yeah, because you have a galvanic...
thousands of them.
You got a galvanic reaction of dissimilar metals. I mean, even with stainless and aluminum, there can be, but it's very low.
Yeah.
Compared to stainless and galvanized
steel.
Or mild steel.
Yeah.
Because basically, once you cut through the galvanization of the steel, you're into raw iron, which iron and stainless don't like each other.
Yeah.
So you're going to have a galvanic reaction eventually that's going to corrode.
Yeah. We've replaced a lot of steel decks that are only a few years old, where the screws are just pulling out of the thin wall, light gauge steel.
Yeah.
Because it's the point of corrosion. I think that's one of the cons of it. Like, honestly, from an objective perspective, when you're looking at durability, you go, okay, well, you can't use in coastal areas because you're really susceptible to corrosion. So
right.
And you can't extrude steel, so you can't get any kind of profiles or channels in there that are going to be within a tolerance that you need for any kind of clip system that's hidden.
And they're not really designed for thin, low areas. You're using basically a thicker joist, like a 7, 8, 10 inch thick.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah, and then if you're using, 100%. Like, if anybody's owned a galvanized trampoline, how long do they last for? It's like, my one rotted out in like rusted out in 2 years.
Yeah.
And that was galvanized, and it had fresh air circulating around it.
Sure. Ours lasted longer, but we had a lot of, the moss and the mildew kind of kept it together for longer. Yeah. The rain.
Maybe I bought a shitty quality one.
A 10.
It was expensive, though.
No. I'm just kidding, man.
I mean, in terms of, you need special equipment for it. Like, you need slow cutters, you need grinders, that kind of thing. So you need an additional bit of kit in your arsenal.
A paint department.
Yeah, paint department. And then if we look at connection details, they're pretty rudimentary.
Yeah.
So you don't really have nice brackets.
Like, here's a 90 bracket. Here's a 90 bracket. You use it on everything.
Yeah.
And there might be one other bracket, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So, Okay.
So I suppose in terms of availability, though, you do have manufactured to length or cut to length type scenarios, which is quite good, but it's not available on a lot of stores because it is cut to length. So it's not like a stocked item that building merchants are carrying. that, like you said, the fixing the boards, you can only put one surface on it. Like, you're not mixing and matching surface materials, so you're
Right.
not putting decking boards and tiles, so you're
Right.
really quite limited in what you can do there.
Right.
I've seen some, trickier details around with how you're going to connect actual railing systems to it, because if you've got longer or big sections of beams, how do you put a bolt through it? Because thin, light gauge steel, you can't just put a screw into it.
You're blocking it. You're blocking it out with traditional lumber.
Yeah.
And you're going back to a traditional lumber pack or something like that to get all your post details or something.
Yeah, for sure. So typically when you're cutting it, you're then resurfacing the edge as well. So you've got another spray booth.
Yeah.
Basically. Yeah. Okay. And then once again, you're wrapping it. Like if it's still a galvanized system, you've still got to wrap it and cover up unless it's painted black.
Yeah.
And how, I've seen a couple of stair systems for steel framing, but what's your experience with?
My experience is pretty low with actual stair systems on these brands. I pretty much am still working a traditional timber for my all my stairs. So I'm cutting out jacks still.
Yeah.
So I haven't really gone into any multiple stair sets on any project where I've done an alternate material except for treated lumber.
Yeah. And then in terms of design services, I know most of the steel options out there provide some kind of design service because they have to know what length they're going to cut the steel to and things like that. But is it certified? Like, have they got the span details and everything? I think they'd prefer. I think some of them that do.
Some of them do, but I think they prefer if you have your personal engineer go over everything and stamp it for your state, that kind of thing. Which is, again, just another expense, that you're trying to rectify into permitting. And it's just sometimes can be kind of a hassle.
So to summarize, what we like about it is that it's sometimes comes in black. It's super long spans, which are good, and it doesn't absorb moisture.
And it's pretty flat.
Stable.
It's flat.
Yeah. For sure. But what we really don't like about it is maybe the effort that you have to go to work with it and the mess that it can make, and maybe the inability of compatibility of screws.
The incompatibility of the screws is kind of a clincher. Like, you may not realize that until 5 or 10 years after you've built something that it's failing like that.
Yeah, well, what do you do when all your screws are pulling out?
I don't know.
Move them all over an inch and re-screw them down.
Maybe. I mean, if you want to keep the frame, but maybe after seeing that, maybe the homeowner wouldn't want to keep the frame.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do? I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, especially in a marine environment.